All right, Mr. Mayor, good morning.
Thanks.
Long
Good
time no see. Thanks for coming in. We can do this one of two ways. We offer this to the other candidates as well. If you want to make a fast opening statement for the good of people who are watching online on PennLive right now, or alternately, we can just dive straight into questions. Your preference.
Yeah, I'll make a short opening statement if
Sure.
I may. First of all, I want to say congratulations on a really good job last night. I thought the debate was well done. It was informative. I hope people have had a chance to watch it, or they'll go back and watch it now. I assume it's archived on the PennLive site. Is that true? And I think the editorial board interviews are going to be enlightening as well. So and we'll discuss that more. But look, the reason I'm running for mayor for a second term is because I want to get the city on a sustainable path for its future. I think we've made great progress in the past 3.5 years, but there's still a lot of work to do. There is no question that where we were 3.5, 4 years ago is a place that we don't want to go back to again. We lost our sovereignty. We've been taken over by a state receiver. We had become the first municipality charged with SEC fraud in the nation. City services were decimated. They were looking at privatizing public works. Taxes had gone through the roof. We'd lost our parking asset and our incinerator, and the city was in very hard times. Crime was up. Nobody could sell a home. Well, all that has changed in 3.5 years, and it's changed for the better. Crime has gone down every year for the past 3 years. This last quarter was the best first quarter that the housing market has seen in Harrisburg specifically since the housing crash. That's an extraordinary thing. Confidence is back. We are bringing back jobs like never before. We're seeing increases in all of our revenues. The reason I know our population is growing is because of our tax revenue is increasing. Our revenue from the amusement tax is increasing. Even the parking tax revenue is increasing, meaning that more people are parking in the downtown. These are good signs that confidence is returning, and I think now is not the time to sort of switch gears and go back to the old politics. I think everything that we built is fragile, and it's going to require steady, continued, competent leadership in the years to come. I do believe I can get us out of Act 47. We can talk more about a plan to do that, but that is why I have decided to run for a second term. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Well, you mentioned that crime is down, and I follow the crime reports and statistics, but some people doubt that crime is down. They don't feel like it's down, or they actually doubt the veracity of the statistics. What can you say to convince people or assure them that the statistics are legitimate?
So they're not my statistics. They are the FBI statistics. I don't report them or have any control over how they're reported. They show crime down in every major category consistently, down every year that I've been in office since the previous administration, down in in aggregate, in total, about almost 30%, which is really a pretty extraordinary thing. I think the reason that people don't feel that crime is down as much as it is because there's still too much of it, for sure, and we still have the same hot spots in Harrisburg that we've always had. Several of the areas that we've really targeted, one is in the sort of Mulder Square area of Allison Hill, another is in the Camp Curtin area of Uptown. Those are still the hot spots for crime. So crime still exists. It's down. It's not good enough. But let me tell you what we're going to do to try and get it down even further. We do have a plan for that. One of the ways is we're looking at moving to a precinct system for our police department. And we are already at this stage working on constructing a precinct in South 15th Street, which is in the South Allison Hill Mulder Square area, where police will muster, where they'll be stationed 24 hours a day, where they'll be able to respond, I think, more quickly to the neighborhood's concerns. We're looking at also putting a new substation in Uptown, somewhere in the Camp Curtin area. That location hasn't been determined. And we are continuing to look at hiring more police officers, training them in a community policing model, And I said last night at the debate, and this is true, I've hired 46 police officers in 3.5 years. That's a pretty extraordinary number given the relative size of the Harrisburg Police Department. We haven't been able to increase our overall complement because people have retired at the same rate as that we're bringing people on. But there's a limit to how many new officers you can bring on at once if you're going to train them, and they're going to get to know the community, and they're going to get to have the proper community policing training. Yes, sir.
How large a complement do you need, Mayor, for it to be effective?
It needs to be higher than it currently is under the strong plan. I think.
How many officers?
I think at least.
Bodies in total is that?
Yeah, it's depending on how you count it. I think we would need at least another 15 to 20 officers. So the question to really get to where we need to be, and that's Chief Carter's opinion, not just my opinion. The question is, how are you going to fund it? And there are some efforts underway to look for additional grant possibilities for funding. One of the things that I've discussed for the Camp Curtin area is that we've currently been working on a burn grant, which is a federal grant that can exist in multiple phases. We've had phase 1 so far, which has been looking at the sort of community perceptions of crime, the root causes of crime. We can go back to that and we can apply for funding for additional community policing focused officers that will be in that neighborhood. We're also looking at another grant through Temple University that would allow us to bring in what we call sort of violence interrupters, or a variety of community individuals who would be trained and would work hand in hand with the police force. That's another way to sort of actively build up your overall complement, is by partnering with community members as well. That's there. Now those are grants, and I understand that we need long-term sustainability, but they get us started. The city has made great strides over the past 3.5 years in getting itself in a position where it can pay. It's not only paying all of its bills, but it's actually underspending its budget through careful management. We've been building up a surplus. Each year we've built up a surplus. We now have well over $10 million that we can devote to infrastructure. But we can also take some of that money, and I think we can slowly begin to grow the size of our police force. And that's going to be a conversation that we have to have with City Council, because ultimately they're the governing body and will make the decisions on how we spend this surplus. But we can do it. We can do it because of the taxing revenue that we've been able to push for that was not a part of the original strong plan. There was some representation made last night that we were handed this wonderful plan, and it was the last administration had done a great job. In fact, we were handed a strong plan that didn't work. All the revenue projections were wrong. There was a huge hole in the initial budget, and we didn't have the resources that we needed. And I led the charge to pass an LST increase, which is absolutely necessary for the city's fiscal stability. It's also necessary from the standpoint that it allows those that come into the city to help contribute to the city's budget and sustainability. It was an unpopular decision in some respects. It was not supported by the Commonwealth. It was not part of the plan. The city petitioned the court on its own directly for it. They've come around to realize that it was necessary. But it was necessary in part because the original projections in the strong plan, both the earned income tax and the parking tax, were not accurate. So the real question we have a sustainable budget now. We have a sustainable budget that will work. It will allow us to grow slowly. It will allow us to hire more police officers. It will allow us to pay all of our bills. The question is, how do we take that with us upon exiting Act 47? And Act 47 has some real structural problems.
I
Okay,
want
yes.
to hear all about that
All right.
before we move on to that. Christine was saying there was this,
Yes.
nonetheless, there is still a perception
Yes.
in the community that they are not safe. You can hire 1,000 police officers and you can have them out 24 hours a day, as I'm sure you'll agree. But if there's not that same relationship, that same trust coming from the community, that they feel safe in their homes, that they feel like these officers are looking out for them, then you find yourself at maybe not as successful or at cross purposes. Do you feel like, one, Chief Carter has done an effective job at building the bridges, sort of given the overall tenor of police-community relationships, both here and nationwide? And two, what steps do you take going forward to help people feel invested in sort of their own safety? Because it is a two-way exchange. I think you'd agree.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said, and I do think it's about trust. And I think the leadership of our police department is very strong at the moment, and I think it does have the trust and the support of the community. Chief Carter has had more people sort of turn themselves into him personally and voluntarily than anyone else I know or read about anywhere in the nation. When we have made headlines for community policing, it's always been, for the most part, for the right reason in Harrisburg. And I think we have built up trust and credibility. That's why I think it's so important to keep Chief Carter. My opponents have been critical of him and his policing style. And again, I think I'm the only one who can convince him to stay, as he is currently eligible to retire. I've already convinced him to stay, and I think I could convince him to stay further. So I think we're very fortunate to have his leadership, and I think that bridging the divide between the community and the police is something that is essential, and I think we've done a better job in Harrisburg than elsewhere in the nation, and we're certainly committed to that, and it's part of a larger strategy. Now there are some good ideas out there. I know that the residency requirement came up last night. Other things have come up. If I could address those a little bit. Part of the reason we lost the residency requirement in Harrisburg is because we lost our sovereignty. We went into receivership, the state took over, and that mistake basically led the state to give away residency in exchange for other collective bargaining that was done under receivership. The city really didn't have any say over that. If the city had been able to seize control of its own destiny, I don't think we would have lost the residency requirement. But it's gone at the moment. It's gone because of receivership, and that's not something that we want to go back to. And I think the city could easily slip back to receivership and a loss of sovereignty if we don't stay the course that we've currently charted. In terms of having a police force that is more reflective of the community it serves, I am all about recruitment. We have made extraordinary efforts to try and recruit people from within the community, and yet we still don't have the applications. And I'm not the first mayor to say, please, if you live in Harrisburg, consider an honorable career in policing and apply for a job. It's a solid job, good paying job, and it's a great way to give back to the community that you love. It's not like we're turning away local applicants. So how do you increase the number of people? Well, that's where you get to this issue of the school resource officer program. And it's something that I have pushed repeatedly. I've tried to fund. One of my great regrets was the council eliminated that funding when I proposed it. We had an arrangement with the school district that they were willing to try it on a pilot basis that would have been positive. But if you can have police officers acting as mentors in the schools to our youth, overseeing a police academy, which is a very good idea and is something that we ought to go back to, you will have more people see policing as a possible career path and as something very positive rather than having the relationship always be antagonistic. And if you have SROs, one of the things that I think is really important about it is that in the summertime, when school's out, they already know all the kids, they know the families, and they generally have a relationship which will sort of carry through and make for a safer time even when school is out. So
would you have to revisit,
yeah.
would you have to revisit the residency requirement in another round of contract negotiations? Is that how you get back to that?
It would have to be collectively bargained, and at this point, we're not in a position to do that. And I think that if the city were to continue to recover and continue to, to build its sustainable path for the future, I think that's something that might be able to be revisited. Right now, we've taken the position that we're going to try and incentivize residency. So the city does have a program where you can get money towards your closing costs and towards purchasing a home. Certainly, it is the cost of living and some of the amenities that you get from living in Harrisburg are much less expensive than they are in the suburbs. So that's an important story to tell, and a lot of people are moving to the city for that very reason.
To revisit some things from last night, you did mention during the debate that there was a deal afoot regarding the Civil War Museum and the selling of artifacts. Can you reveal any more information about that?
Yeah, there is, I think, a misperception that I'm at odds with the Civil War Museum. There is no question that I feel, and I think they feel as well, that the deal that we inherited here doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. They don't pay any rent, and yet the city is responsible for all the maintenance on the building. The city doesn't have the resources to do that. The city owns the collection and has put millions of dollars into the collection, and they don't even own their own collection. So, what is that? So we've had a series of meetings, and we've talked about how can we create a long-term sustainable path for the museum, which is all I've ever wanted, frankly. And that involves them paying rent, but it also involves the city paying for the capital expenditures that are needed for the museum. And the best way to do that, in my opinion, is basically to sell them the artifacts. This is a proposal. It's still it's still going back and forth between their board and the city, and I think it will come to fruition in some point. City Council is going to have to sign off and vote for this. But the other thing that's going on at the moment is that we have a master plan for Reservoir Park. It is a really good master plan. We've had a lot of different public input meetings. There's another one coming up in July. It's not quite finished. It's still open for public comment, but it's got a lot of great ideas in there. Everything from eliminating through traffic to a new dog park to new handball courts to a new bike track and a spray park. Lots of good stuff. And we have a grant strategy with DCNR and DCED that I think can fund a part of that. But we could also take a portion of the proceeds of the sale of the artifacts to do that. We could do two things with it. We could basically use some of it to establish a capital improvement fund for the museum, which would solve the issue of how we maintain the maintenance of the museum long term, and we could put others of it into Reservoir Park. The museum is a wonderful resource, but it's not really connected to the park. It's not connected in any way really to the city. We could do, by changing the traffic patterns, the lighting, the flow of the parking, there's a lot of things that we could do to better integrate the museum. There's talk about a cafe.
Sorry.
Yes, sure.
What are you saying you're getting from revenue from that sale?
That's still being negotiated, but enough money to do.
If you had to ballpark it.
Enough money.
Tens of millions?
No, not that. No.
Millions?
Millions, yes. Enough to, much less than was originally paid for the artifacts, but enough to fund a good significant chunk of the Reservoir Park Master Plan and a capital improvement fund. And if we did that and there was rent being paid to the city on a regular basis that also helped sort of replenish that fund, we would have a sustainable and working solution for the future. And I'm committed to doing that. I'm a problem solver. I'm interested in working with everybody to try and push through things and get things done. When we had an issue with the hotel tax in Harrisburg, there was some tension there because a lot of that money was not going to where I thought the city needed it. We reached an agreement in which they agreed to fund an events manager for the city. They agreed to help promote the city's festivals, and as a result, we had the best Capona we've had in recent memory. We hired basically a full-time events person to help run those events. All those events are now basically funded by the money that they're generating, but they're promoted with the tourism dollars, and that's been an incredibly successful thing for the city. We took what was a burden financially for the city, and we turned it into what it should be, a sort of positive, sustainable pathway. So that was hard to negotiate, and it took willingness to sort of change on both sides, but we can generally get through that. And I'm all about working through. We inherited a lot of things that weren't funded, didn't work properly, and slowly but surely I think we are setting them all right. And we will continue, and I'm committed. That's an example of something that I'm committed to fixing, and there are others as well. Yeah.
You had to spend so much time this term on the finances. When that's done, I'd love to get some thoughts from you on kind of the vision things. What would you like to do? I know Lori Martin Roberts talked about things as pie in the sky as a revolving restaurant up at the Civil War Museum. Just what are some of those wish list things?
We don't have a revolving restaurant in the master plan, but there
Right.
there is a restaurant in the master plan,
Wow.
right? You should be able to get ice cream and snacks in the park. You should be able to sit down and have that. There's actually a couple different options. There's a food truck area for the redesign of Reservoir Park. That's all actually not pie in the sky. there is a very good likelihood that we will be able to make that happen and get that done.
But other
And
things
okay.
on your wish list that you'd love to see.
Well, okay, so we're going to the pie in the sky question already.
Yes,
All right,
already.
I would like
Already.
I would like to preface this by saying I don't want to go back to a time when we were so focused on pie in the sky that we didn't pay a lot of attention to how we were going to pay for things. And people sometimes criticize my focus on grant funding, but I'm very focused on how we can fund things. I'm not going to suggest things that we don't have a way to pay for them. And I want to be honest always about what we're discussing when we're discussing money, because Harrisburg's problem started when we began doing things that we couldn't pay for. Let's just agree with that. And so we're not going to go back there to pie in the sky. But if I could do anything or have anything, yeah, I have some real ideas. I mean, one would be we have to, and these are pie in the sky ideas, all right? So I'm not suggesting that this is going to happen, but our third-class cities have to have a way to expand their borders in a way that allows them to sort of increase their tax base. We have too many municipalities in Pennsylvania. It doesn't make sense. This is not just a Harrisburg issue. We should be merging municipalities. We should be merging services. We should be merging school districts. So I'm in favor of a county-wide school district system. I am in favor of an expanding, I did suggest that one immediate option that is not totally unrealistic would be allowing the city to annex the state hospital grounds. It's not currently something which is providing needed tax revenue to Susquehanna Township. It is a means of giving the city a sustainable path to its future. If the state would like to, make less of a contribution to the city in the future, then how about do something where we can increase our tax base by increasing our not our tax exempt property, but our potentially tax exempt property within our relatively small landlocked city. I'd like to see a regional transportation system that really works. CAT has been a disaster, but there is also the need for real light rail options. How we connect the city residents to the jobs which do exist and exist in the surrounding municipalities is a real issue, and how we get people into the city. I think that would certainly help bridge some of the divides that we have. I think these are pie in the sky ideas, but they are possible. So I would put money into transportation, education. I'd like to eliminate the property tax as a means of funding schools and move to a state system which is not only larger but isn't as dependent on the wealth of the immediate community. So those are big ideas. I think we might be slowly getting there on some of those, and some of them are bipartisan, frankly. So we'll see. Yes.
Two of your challengers last night seemed to take a male jab at you. One you did respond to last night about having a favorite neighborhood, and given there were favorite neighborhoods. Another was, I will be at everything. I will be in the neighborhoods. I'll be there when there's a shooting. I'll be there when there's everything. You've taken some criticism in the past for this space. How would you describe your relationship with the community, and is that something you feel like there's room to?
Yeah, so let's start with the favorite neighborhood issue. It seems like my one candidate, that's all that she's running on. I don't think she's running on any substantive changes to policy. There were none discussed yesterday before the editorial board. Instead, she's running on a sort of ideology, which I would argue is a divisive ideology. It's basically pitting one neighborhood against another under the guise of unity. It's false. I am working hard every day for every neighborhood in this city. This picking on Midtown is really ridiculous because I have spent no time in Midtown. What's happening in Midtown is you have a lot of entrepreneurs which are out there investing. And that's a good thing. We want that in all of our neighborhoods. Instead, I've been focusing on trying to establish an infrastructure like in Mulder Square, or new building projects like in Uptown Harrisburg with the courthouse and with the new archives that will allow what's happening in Midtown to happen everywhere. And I think that's really what we want. The second part of your question had to do with being at the scene of the crime, so to speak. And I know that is different for people, because I know that Steve Reed sort of was known for being there and directing, directing traffic and directing the fire department, and directing the police department. Well, I think that's, first of all, I've been through emergency management training. I don't think it's helpful to have the mayor at the scene of a crime. You need to have a clear chain of command, and that chain of command needs to be run by the professionals that know what we're doing. We are lucky because I have two very competent chiefs. I have Chief Carter on the police side, I have Chief Enterline on the fire side. I trust them, I trust their leadership. You don't need somebody in there telling people you need to bring the hose that way, or you just can't do it. Now you do need somebody who will speak to the larger issues, and I've done that. When we had the hoverboard disastrous fire, I've been there. I go to the funerals. I am in the community, but I am not as visible in the past. I think that's good. I think that's better for Harrisburg because we have the right leadership. If you have the right leadership in place, then you let those people do their job and you don't get in their way.
I mean, to that point, we asked Ms. Martin Roberts about this. You think about other city mayors, say former Governor Rendell, who was equal sort of parts cheerleader and policy wonk for his city in Philadelphia. I'd be curious about now, 3.5 years in, how you see yourself in how you balance that kind of very obvious just sort of marketing agent for your town, because that's as much a part of being a mayor as it is being an executive.
Yes.
Have you grown into that? Can you show us instances where you've been that kind of cheerleader figure for the city?
Oh, I think I am a cheerleader for the city. I do nothing but champion the city. I did some of that last night. I've done some of it today. We can talk about all the good things that are happening. I mean, I cut ribbons every week, multiple times. I talk about the positive investment that's happening regularly. There is a degree to which I'd like to do more of that, and I think we can move to more of that as the city becomes increasingly sustainable. But let's be realistic here. I took over a completely decimated, dysfunctional government. I've had to spend a lot of time working on repairing the relationship between the branches of government. I said last night, when I took office, people were, one branch was suing another branch regularly. The mayor never went down to council chambers. It was always antagonistic. The controller didn't get along, the treasurer didn't get along. Well, we are working beautifully and smoothly, in part because I spend 3 nights a week, constantly at those meetings, working on policy and being there. And I thought it was a remarkable thing at the debate last night that everybody on that stage said they do the same thing which I'm doing, which is go to all those meetings and be there. That's a huge transformation for the city, and I think that's important. I'm also working without a chief of staff, without a business administrator. Because of the city's financial situation, I was put in a position where I have to basically run all departments. That requires a lot of internal work and meetings, and I want to slowly build the capacity back for the city, but I was handed not much to work with. So some of the things that I've done, which I'm really proud of, which don't get a lot of credit, is that I personally have negotiated 3 union contracts with each of our unions successfully. Remember, in the old days, there was certainly no love between the administration and the fire department. We managed to close a fire station, reduce minimum manning, put in Chief Enterline, hire, I think we've hired over almost 30, I think 29 new firefighters, reduce overtime, and basically have relative labor peace with the fire department. We have a new 4-year contract with the police department, which they embraced, which has some really good features in it that we can talk about, but nonetheless, I personally negotiated with them. I personally negotiated a contract with AFSCME. We've brought back 43 AFSCME jobs since I've been mayor, none of which were accounted for in the Strong Plan. So 43 necessary, I would say absolutely necessary basic jobs, from trash collectors to parks maintenance workers to park rangers to you name it. All those jobs have been brought back because slowly but surely we've been able to pay for them, and we've been able to find ways to pay for them, additional codes, inspectors. All of that has happened over the last 3.5 years, and that takes a lot of behind the scenes work and a lot of time and energy. So I recognize that the mayor's job is both. I think I am a cheerleader for the city, and I think as the city continues to grow and strengthen, I can continue to tell that story.
There has been some criticism of which meetings you do decide to attend in the community? How did you approach the strategy of when to, like you mentioned all the work you had to do in the office and the different things, which community events you attend and which ones you didn't?
I don't know what that's about. I go to as many events as I possibly can attend. I have an open door policy at my office. I'll meet with everybody and anybody who's a city resident. I do as much as I possibly can. It is sometimes I have a very busy schedule, but I am out as much as possible, and I have been for every year I've been mayor, not just now. So I will say I do have a family with 3 young children. I have a upper schooler, a middle schooler, and a lower schooler. I sort of abandoned my business to run for mayor, and my wife is running the whole show, which has been a huge responsibility for her. I have some guilt there, so occasionally I do try and take some time, especially on the weekends, to be with them, because this is a more than a full-time job. This is a 24-hour job that requires you able at all times to take calls and texts, and you don't get to disconnect at any point, and it can be hard on family life. So I do try and carve out some time for that. I do the best job I can, and I will be the first to take constructive criticism on how I can do better. But I would like to go to as many events as possible, and if people contact me through the proper channels, if I'm given enough notice to go that I can get it on my schedule, then I'm usually there.
Well, with that in mind, constructive criticism.
Okay.
How about lessons you've learned? What have you seen that, as you look back through the past 4 years, what would you have done differently, or what are things that were an education type of process for you?
I have said this, and I agree. I think I tried to take on too many battles at once. I do think there is a degree to which we needed a mayor who was a fighter, who would stand up for the city, who would defend the city's interests, especially as we were coming out of receivership, when a lot of things were sort of being done for the city, but without the city's input. So we needed somebody who was going to take an active role in revenues and how tax dollars were spent and how we could get on a sustainable path with the museum or something else. But I am actually I am somebody who I think at heart is somebody who wants to get things done. I think I am actually very much a moderate in terms of wanting to work with people. I have strong beliefs, but I'm good. I'm good at being able to develop relations with people that disagree with me philosophically. I've got a good relationship going now with our new senator, DeSanto, and I think that's important. We probably don't agree on anything, but we do actually agree on making sure that the state continues to fund the city. He agrees on that, and we've talked about things like why I feel the gun bill, the preemption bill, is a bad idea, and why he shouldn't be supporting that. I'm not afraid to disagree and do things. So I feel that I have been overly confrontational at times, and it did take me a while to get my bearing as a mayor. It's a real criticism, and I will admit that, but I think I've gotten better the longer I've done it. I think it's an extraordinary cauldron that you are put in, and I think that's one of the reasons why I would be the right choice for a second term, because, okay?
If you had to take a mulligan on anything, like one thing from the last 3.5 years, to Kate's point, what would it be?
I regret the way the whole thing was handled with PennLive and the Patriot-News. I feel that was a mistake, and I have at no point in time, even when I was most frustrated, did I make it impossible for Christine or the Patriot-News to do its job. No point in time did I ever have anybody at the city, department heads, or anybody not comment to PennLive. There was a time when I didn't comment to PennLive, but I think that was probably a good thing in the sense that it helped develop other sources and makes sometimes the story a little less about an individual and a little bit more about the process. But I think we're past that. I think that was an error.
You mentioned the state contribution to the city.
Yes.
The fight over that. Last night you mentioned the commuter tax,
Mm-hmm.
and you said that's really helped.
Yes.
Obviously, city finances. How do you see your role as representing the residents of Harrisburg and everything you need, but also playing host to this large group of people who come in and out every day? How do you balance the needs of both of those audiences?
Yeah, there is some tension there, but I think it's one of the great assets that Harrisburg has. I am not one that feels that the Capitol complex or state government is a hindrance to the city. It is probably the city's greatest non-natural asset. I like to say I think the river and our natural setting and City Island and the Appalachian Trail and the Greenbelt, that's really, and our historic architecture, that's really the foundation of the appeal of the city. But the state government is amazing. It doubles our population during the day. It brings in people from all over the Commonwealth. It puts us on a national stage on a regular basis. We are fortunate to have it here. So I'm a supporter of that. At the same time, there has to be a way that we recognize this sort of symbiotic relationship of existence here, and the degree to which the people who work in the city have to help contribute to the city's long-term sustainability. Because I think we all feel that as the city goes, so goes the region. So you can't have a majority of your property tax exempt and be in a very confined geographic, we're a very small city, geographically speaking, and then expect the city, which has large pockets of poverty, to be able to sustain itself through its own tax revenues. There has to be a way that people who work in the city contribute. Now, they do contribute through a variety of ways, but one way that they could contribute, I felt, was in the local services tax. It's not, we talk about it being a cup of coffee a week, but it's that, and that's what it is. But it nonetheless allows them to help contribute towards essential city services, and this other issue of the payment to the city from the Commonwealth. Well, this is a very reasonable thing. Other capitals do this throughout the country. The Commonwealth, we protect all of the state capitol complex from fire on a regular basis. We're there collaborating with the Capitol Police on a regular basis as well. It's not like those agencies exist unto themselves. It's a constant collaboration. Take the president's visit or anything else that happens. So it is reasonable to help reimburse for those services. The state payment of $5 million is just a fraction of the cost of what it costs to run a professional fire department, and it's far less than what it costs for the Commonwealth to establish its own fire department. So what's the problem, really? I don't think there is a problem. I think that on the Hill, oftentimes things get caught up in great, partisan fighting, and it really becomes about horse trading. And I've heard that, more than once. But from the city's perspective, it's a reasonable thing, and I'll continue to advocate for why it's important. And it's only one part of the city's sustainable plan for the future, but it's not something that we should be arguing about every year. And I mean, our state legislator, our state senator agrees on that. I think we can get there. We are going to do something this year, which is significant, that the city hasn't done, which is we are looking to hire a lobbyist, and it's in the budget. It's something we're doing in conjunction with City Council. The purpose of the lobbyist is to help educate the legislators on the problems with Act 47. I'm going back to this, the fact that it is, basically like a roach motel. You can get in, but you can't get out. And they give you these tools to be successful in Act 47, but then they say you got to get out and you can't take any of them with you. I mean, who writes a law like that? Our state legislature does. So we're going to try and explain to them, it's not just Harrisburg. We work with the Municipal League and with other cities why it is that we need to do it. And I think as long as we can have a reasonable, meritorious discussion, I think we're gonna be able to get that law changed. If we can't, that's where home rule comes in, and I think home rule is very misunderstood and is being frankly mischaracterized by some of my opponents. They seem to imply that home rule is going to mean, increasing your taxes. No, home rule would mean keeping the taxes where they are now, basically allowing us to keep what we have outside of Act 47. I think that is, whereas if we don't do home rule and we aren't able to change the law, then you're going to see the taxes go through the roof, the real estate taxes, which would be absolutely crushing and devastating to the city. It would send us right back into bankruptcy, and it wouldn't work. So it is sort of the opposite of that. Home rule is also a healthy process in the sense that it allows us to seize our own destiny, write our own charter, not become just simply a creature of the state with one-size-fits-all third-class city, but instead, we could reimagine what we want in government. We could eliminate the mayor and bring in a city manager. We could eliminate certain elected positions that we don't think are necessary. Do we need an elected treasurer? I don't know. We have a full-time deputy treasurer that works every day. The elected treasurer is part-time. Do we need that? These things could be discussed as part of a home rule process. It's also good to go through, I think, every few generations, much like a comprehensive plan and other things are necessary to go through. I think it could lead to greater civic engagement. And part of what I am trying to do, and it's been very difficult, is to build back a sense of trust in government. And with all the history that happened in Harrisburg, and with all of the national, disillusionment with the current electoral climate, there are a lot of people that do not feel connected to city government or their local government. And one way to possibly connect them could be through going through a home rule process, which is a very democratic process. If council would initiate the process, which is what we need to have started, you could have a whole series of town hall meetings throughout the city. You could then encourage people to run for the charter commission, which could be a very good political process, could allow people to run for office that and attract them in ways that running for a full-time job just isn't in the cards. Who has the time to be on school board or to run for city council? But there are a lot of people that might have time to devote some time to a charter commission. We could get them involved in the process. Whatever changes were made would still have to go to public referendum. Everything would be voted on. I think it could be a really positive process and a good process for restoring sort of faith in our political system, and a good way to sort of, as the city reemerges from its past, to get everybody on the same page.
Some fears I've
Yep.
heard about home rule is that it doesn't. You mentioned about the tax situation, but that you're saying it would just keep it as it is, but there's no ceiling then to prevent a future mayor or future leaders to increase it. So that's some of the thinking of, once we open this Pandora's box, we can't go back. Like then there is no cap on the earned income tax.
What do you mean? So we'll stay in Act 47 forever?
Where you'd respond
yeah.
to those fears, and the other fear I've heard is that when you create a new charter, then there's no, as far as legal arguments, there's no precedent. You have to retry cases and set your own precedent for your individual unique charter, because under the third-class city code, there's already a set of precedents.
Okay, I mean, I think a lot of communities have gone through a home rule process, and they've gone through it successfully, and so I think those concerns, I'm not going to say they're not valid, but I don't think they delegitimize the process. I think it could be very good. Ultimately, yes, if we don't elect the right people in Harrisburg, you no matter what charter you have or what system of government you have, you could go right back into a problem if you're not committed to having to paying your bills and having having the right amount of income to cover the right amount of expenses. But you can't stay in Act 47 forever, in part because there's a clock that the legislature has passed with Act 47. So we don't have a choice, Christine. This is the thing. The coordinator has been very clear on this. At the end of 2018, there are, basically your choices are get kicked out of Act 47 and raise your taxes to cover the revenue, raise the real estate taxes, go back into receivership and have the state do all the dirty work for you, which is, lay off half your police and fire department in order to not have to raise the taxes, or 1 3-year extension. We're going to go for the 3-year extension. That's what's going to happen, and that 3-year period is going to require home rule. And it's going to be my job, or the next, it's going to be the next mayor's job to work with City Council to help educate the public on that, and we can do it within a 3-year period. It definitely is going to take at least 1.5 years, and the 3-year period is the right one. That does happen to coincide with the end of a second 4-year term. We got 1 more year in Act 47 and a 3-year extension. That's why I think we can do it. Again, we have a sustainable budget now. We don't need to raise taxes from where they are now. We simply need to be able to keep what we have. That's it. And that's a really impressive place to be in. There are some other things that we could do. There are some sort of radical things that we could do that we haven't discussed. We could move to prepay a lot of our debt, and I think you're going to see me propose some of that this year. When we stopped paying our bills under the Thompson administration and we restructured our debt, part of the deal with our general obligation debt was, okay, you're going to pay it, but you don't have to pay it till down the line. You'll just move it at the end, and you'll have to pay interest on it. Well, we can prepay that, and to the extent that we prepay that, we save millions of dollars in interest. And there has to be a discussion with how we take some of the money that we have in a surplus and we use it to both prepay the debt and as well as address our infrastructure and capital needs. So there will be definitely some prepayment of debt, and if we do that, rather than basically we can get to the point where our general obligation debt is retired, and then the city will be able to even reduce its revenue options over what we currently have now. But right now, we have to figure out a way to pay our bills, and luckily, due to careful fiscal management, we could prepay the debt sooner than people imagine. If we had only done this with the incinerator, you see, this is part of the problem. I said last night that my opponent, Gloria Martin Roberts, then Linda Thompson, Mayor Steve Reed, and James Ellison, who was Gloria Martin Roberts' appointee to the Harrisburg Authority Board, all in 2007 voted to double our debt and basically pay the professionals and add on millions and millions more debt to the incinerator, which essentially kicked the can down the road until the point in 2012, 2013 when all the bills came due and everything collapsed. If we had at that time done the right thing, which is basically sold the parking and sold the incinerator, we would have been in a position to have had hundreds of millions of dollars less of debt to retire. It would have been difficult, but if you read the presentment and the grand jury's the second grand jury's findings, you'll see that one of the continuing themes is that at any point, if we just said stop doubling down, the problem would have been more easily addressed than ultimately what we did. So I was very much against refinancing the debt in 2007. I had pushed for a sale of the incinerator at the time. They were unwilling to do it because it would have admitted losing some money. So there may have had to have been at that time a state receivership. It would have required basically doing what we did, just doing it sooner. But if we'd done it sooner, we wouldn't have had as high parking rates and we wouldn't have had as high tipping fees. And if you want to talk about the legacy of doubling down on the incinerator debt, those are really the two legacies that city residents have to deal with every day as we continue to pay off the debt. We have ridiculously high tipping fees for our trash, which means we pay $190 a ton. We pay much, much more than surrounding municipalities. And then our parking rates are ridiculous to the point where they really retard business growth. And we have to compensate for that, and there are ways that we're trying to compensate for that, but that is the legacy of that bad decision.
We actually did get some chatter about that in social media during the debate last night. We didn't get a chance to address that. You've just said the parking rates get in the way of development. What, if anything, can be done to redress that balance, to bring down the rates, to make it more affordable for people to park downtown? What weapons do you have in your tool bag?
Okay. So right now, the people that control the parking budget, Park Harrisburg, are the county, Dauphin County, and the creditors, which are assured guaranteed. They are the two groups that approve the budget. And then the parking is basically run by the Commonwealth. It's run by PEDFA. But their position is, hey, we're just the conduit agency. It's really the county and AGM which call the shots. Their philosophy has been, I think, a failed philosophy from the beginning, which is that you just simply keep raising the rates until you cover all of your expenses. You don't look to cut expenses. You don't look to, I guess you do, but you don't. Ultimately, their fail-safe is you just raise the rates. The guys from Assured are all from New York. They think we don't pay enough for parking. They don't see why we can't even go higher with parking. And it's been a continual battle on my part to explain to them the realities of the Harrisburg market and the importance of not driving away business. And I think we've had some success. I mean, I did, when nobody else thought it was possible, through a lot of hard work, convince them to lower the rates for 5 to 7 from $3 to $2. And they did it. And they did it through an innovative bet, which was, I said, lower them from $3 to $2. If you lose any money, the city will cover it with our tourism dollars. That's a pretty innovative way to get them to do it. They then lowered it, actually made more money, and then kept it in place. So we got it done. Well, so then we tried some other things. We convinced them on Saturdays to give 4 hours of free parking, and now you can get 4 hours of free parking. That is something that I pushed for and created as a means. I said, look, do that, and you're actually going to get more people to want to come to Harrisburg on a Saturday. You have all these empty meters. Why not give them 4 hours? Maybe they'll stay for longer. And of course they did. That took a lot of work to be able to get those things, and those were the two issues that people were most concerned with initially, because those were the two areas where we didn't have a paid parking system, right? We weren't charging on Saturdays, we weren't charging on from after 5. So that's happened. Now, we recently launched this mobile app, Park Mobile, and we had another promotion there, which is let's take it down from $2 to $1, and let's see if we get even more parkers. And I believe that has been successful as well. But nonetheless, it's been a struggle. And I don't think that we have the right leadership with the asset manager, who's John Gass, at the parking system. I feel he's completely disconnected. He is not transparent in the flow of information. It's very hard for the city to get information. So even to this day, even though I've asked for it, I can't get the data on how that dollar promotion worked, even though Standard Parking has it, because John Gass doesn't want to give it out. They've been very closed with that, and I think there is a role for the media to help us in making sure that the parking system is more transparent, and we need that. But I can tell you this: there's a proposal on the table right now, 2 counter proposals. There is a proposal from AGM in the county to raise rates further, and there is a proposal from the city to lower rates. And we're going to try the same philosophy, which is we'll lower rates. We believe it will it will increase parking, and we'll take the risk. You can, if it doesn't work, you can take it out of our payments. That's the proposal that's out there. It's much better than their proposal, which is let's go to $350 and then $375 and then keep going. I hope we're able to get there. The city has been constantly innovative, constantly trying to think of ways that we can get this to work, and we are absolutely willing to be part of the solution. So the answer, I guess, to your question is, how do you do it? Well, there is a degree to which the city profits at the end of the parking, and if we're willing to use that as leverage, or at least put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, then we have been successful, and I think we'll continue to be successful in getting them to look towards adjusting rates.
Under the proposal you just mentioned, how much money would the city be putting up, and what impact to rates? Are you talking about keeping it at $1 from 5 to 7, or what exactly would be the lower rate?
The proposal that we've put forth is a proposal to lower rates from $3 an hour to $2.50 an hour. It's a proposal to all around. It's a proposal to do it for 2 years, and it is willing to. There are 2 payments to the city. One is essentially the rent to the parking authority. We feel that the rent shouldn't be in jeopardy, and that should stay where it is in the waterfall. The other is the city payment, which is the sort of profit payment that we get if the system is working. We're willing to put that up and say, look, if that doesn't result in more revenue, then we will take the hit in that. It's not that much of a risk to the city because we're not going to get it if the system doesn't perform anyway. But that's currently what the proposal is. Dauphin County and AGM have it, and it also it would be good to the system because it has some other adjustments that would be positive, allowing more money to flow into the capital improvements, which we think are necessary for the plan, and settling the issue of the outstanding monies owed to the city.
When would that take place?
We're just waiting to hear back from them. They have our proposal. And I want you to know their proposal was 350, 370. I mean, literally, there's no thought to their proposals. It's just like, here is how much money we're not making, so here's what you need to raise the rates to get it. That's all we
When
get.
would it go to 350 under their proposal?
Oh, immediately. It would have already gone to 350 under their proposal if we hadn't stood up and said, no, that would be bad for the city. Here's an alternative plan. And I'm good at coming up with alternative plans and figuring out ways to pay for them even when resources are tight. And that's part of the solution. You know, that's part of why you need a strong, effective mayor. The city was asleep at the switch under the last administration. You did not have an effective mayor out there advocating for a better, strong plan, even after the damage was done in 2007 and we were headed to a strong plan. If you had had somebody strong in city government, you could have, the plan could have been drastically different. And we were weak. And that's what happens sometimes when you get in a position where you lose your sovereignty. And I never want the city to go back to receivership. And I think that's also important why there has to be some urgency in getting out of Act 47.
Mayor, a lot of this race has focused on the past, things that happened in the past, states, whatnot. Where would you like to see the city in 5 years?
Okay, I think I was focusing on the future there. I was explaining the connection, with the parking. Yeah. Right. Okay. So in 5 years, I would like to be out of Act 47. I would like the city to have sustainable revenues that are sustainable enough that the Commonwealth will agree, and which does not mean an increase beyond what we currently have. Although if I had pie in the sky ideas, some other pie in the sky ideas would be like red light cameras and a drink tax, all of which were prohibited from having by the legislature and don't seem very likely to happen. So just so we're clear, a lot of times these ideas come up, and I agree with them, but we can't do it. Would I like red light cameras on Front Street? Absolutely. I think that it could bring in a lot of money, and it would be good for public safety, but we can't do it. So I would like the city to be out of Act 47. And sustainable. I would like our population in 5 years, so I would like the next census to show our population declines reversing for the first time in 60, 70 years, and they will, because right now we are increasing. I would like home sales to continue to increase, because right now they are continuing to grow stronger than ever. As I said, the first quarter we're back to really historic highs. I would like to see jobs continue to increase, our amusement tax revenues up, our business revenues up, our parking, all these revenues are up because more people are working in the city. I said last night we created hundreds of jobs. The Hamilton Health Center and webpage effects, there's 2 right there that have created hundreds of jobs that have come into the city in the last 4 years. It is undeniable that major corporations and others are coming into the city. We've got a real opportunity with the new medicinal marijuana, where we're going to have a new facility on Cameron Street. At least that license is being applied for. There's new trucking and distribution options that are happening. There have been a lot of inquiries about the LRTA. I think one of the reasons we haven't seen even more economic development is that people are making sure they want to get past this election. They want to make sure that Harrisburg continues on a stable course and doesn't sort of lurch back to where it was, because that type of stability and certainty is very important to investors. I want to see crime continue to decrease in 5 years so that we're a safer city. I don't feel that the current levels are acceptable any more than anyone else does. I'm just noting that they're better than where they were, and that our leadership is doing a really good job with the resources that they have. And that's why I decided to run for mayor originally. It's because, and I don't want to be a career mayor at all. I would love to go back to running a bookstore, being involved in the community from a sort of private, business perspective. But I felt compelled to run because the city was, everything that we had worked to build up in the city was in jeopardy. It was that bad. And there have been a lot of people that have moved into the city in the last 4 years, and I'm not sure they fully realize or remember how bad things were. And that's sometimes why people talk about the past. But I agree we need to be forward-looking, and we need to talk about where we want to be. And I think we're on the right course. And so in the next 4 years, we build on that, and we get to the point where I can go back to running a bookstore and leading a quiet existence.
Mayor, I hate to be a buzzkill on one claim. I was curious about your housing plan, so I actually went back and pulled the data. Quarter one of 2017, there was 133 units sold, according to Greater Harrisburg Realtors. In 08, there were 141. I'm sorry, and 193 in 07. So I'm curious.
Right, that's what I said.
I'm curious.
Since the
But
housing,
you had 141 in 08, 133 quarter to quarter, 08 to 7.
which was at the time of the housing crash. Since then, we've had the strongest quarter that we've had. I've got the numbers here too, if you have them from
Yes.
GHAR. Better than each year it's gone up. The first quarter, and this was the strongest quarter that we have had since. Here we go. So first quarter, 133 units in the first quarter in 2017, 113 in the first quarter of 2016, 105 in the first quarter of 2015, 98 in the first quarter of 2014, 77 in the first quarter of 2013. You have to go all the way back to 2008, which was the time of the housing bubble,
Okay, I'm
to be able to get
curious at what point you're defining that. Okay.
2008.
2008.
Okay, well, that's what I meant. I didn't mean to. And that's a remarkable, if I may say, if you're going to challenge me, I'm going to give you the statistics
I'm
again.
happy to.
That was 77 houses in the first quarter of 2013, followed by 98 in the first quarter of 2014, followed by 105 in the first quarter of 2015, followed by 113 in the first quarter of 2016, followed now by 133, which is a very, very strong quarter.
Right.
So that was my point. It is absolutely each year headed in the right direction. I don't think we're never going to go back to 2007, 2008. So nobody wants to go back to 2007, 2008 because that was a bubble. But people can sell their homes now. They're selling them certainly in record amounts over compared to the last 5 years.
Last time I heard somebody talk about increasingly high rental rates in town. Have you heard any of that? Was that just anecdotal? Of course, that would affect young people who are wanting to move into the city.
I can tell you, as something of a property owner, that we have not seen any rental increases in any of the properties that we have. I do know that there are slumlords and bad landlords that charge outrageous amounts, and oftentimes they run illegal group homes, and they'll take cash, and they'll charge on a weekly basis, and there's all sorts of problems in the city. That we try and crack down on, and that we are, that we're working on. So, but I don't think this. Okay, so I don't want to get off on a long conversation about gentrification, but there is a perception that somehow the rental market is pricing people out of, and that is usually a critique of what happens in gentrification. That's not happening in Harrisburg. We have a problem with unscrupulous rents, but we don't have massive increases that have occurred over the past 3 years due to displacement or anything like that. Ultimately, the way you deal with that is you look to develop more affordable housing options. And if you look at what we're doing, like in Mulder Square, where you have the Housing Authority and Tri-County Housing both doing demolition this month and beginning to build housing, you're creating affordable housing, and you're giving people more options so that they aren't sort of beholden to some of the unscrupulous slumlords.
And we are at the top of the 12 o'clock hour, so put a cap on it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.